This is the Real Health Podcast brought to you by Riordan Clinic. Our mission is to bring you the latest information and top experts in functional and integrative medicine to help you make informed decisions on your path to real health.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is another podcast here from the Riordan Clinic, and it's my great privilege today to introduce one of our newest board members, Dr. Richard Cheng. And Dr. Cheng is a orthomolecular doctor from China who has both a office here in the United States and in China. So may I call you Richard?
Richard, yes, please.
Sir.
Yeah.
Richard, welcome to the Riordan Clinic Board of Directors. We're so glad to have you aboard. So
thank you so much, Ron. It's a great honor.
Yeah. So tell us, I know probably you're a conventional MD, but how did you get interested in orthomolecular medicine?
All right, that's a great question. Well, yes, I have been in the medical field for actually exactly 50 years. I went into medicine, in 1976. Now it's 2026.
Wow.
But anyway, so I was trained as a conventional internist. And I went, I came to the United States 40 years ago. Yes, I have been living longer, more years in the United States than in China. And so I finished my PhD in molecular biology, biochemistry. And then I went on to redo the medicine residency, and I ended up doing a fellowship in cancer. So my PhD was in cancer, in carcinogenesis. And I did a fellowship at the NCI NIH studying lymphoma in particular. Mm-hmm. So cancer is not new to me. And so about 30 years ago, interesting story, this was I think 32 years ago exactly, I stumbled upon a book about Linus Pauling's vitamin C. It's a little book. Unfortunately, I can't find the book anymore, but the title of the book really, intrigued me. Basically, it was something like the secret FDA didn't want you to know about. It's human curiosity.
Sure.
I said, I want to know what it is.
Right.
So that's about vitamin C. So I mean, all I remember was convincing enough. I said, well, vitamin C is good. So I went out, I remember clearly, to Walmart. That was 1992. I bought vitamin C. At that time, vitamin C, I remember what you can find was only 500 milligram tablets. Yeah. Unlike today, you have much hot, at least 1,000, but at that time, 500. So I stopped taking it. But it wasn't until probably about 20-some years ago when I started finally, so over my youth, my prime time, entering the middle age, and that was after I left the NCI NIH, I felt like I was over the peak. I was a little bit down, when I was climbing in academic training, everything was exciting, But after that, that's only so much one can do. But anyway, so I started, interested in anti-aging. Because I'm getting old and my belly was getting bigger and everything else, the rest.
Yeah.
So that's where actually I think I met Tom Levy. He was my mentor. He guided me into also molecular medicine. He's great. So that's where I, studied more, and I read quite a few books of Tom's, and I even translated several of his into Chinese. So I learned a lot of he led me into also molecular medicine. From there, I further expanded it, particularly, in the last 20 years. I first, came into lifestyle medicine and dietary medicine, the weight loss, because 30 years ago when I was in DC, the NIH, Bethesda, Maryland, and I was moonlighting, I started moonlighting there in the weight loss clinics. And I found that, it was boring before, it was, I was interested in high tech, all these DNA, biotech and everything, cancer, weight loss, boring, right? But then I got into the clinic and I found that practically the clinical medicine in the real world mostly is about weight loss, diabetes, and that's foundation, that's practically was everybody. So that's when I was exposed to diet. And so diet is not new to me. And after basically about 20 some years ago, I started looking at the, anti-aging. So I get to know more and more about also molecular medicine. And later on, I discovered, about Tom Seyfried's cancer as metabolic disease, which really clicked with me because, cancer I spent decades on cancer. And then, also at the A4M, I studied anti-aging medicine, functional medicine. And over the past maybe 15 years or so, I began to I see all these, I have to say also molecular medicine is at least one of the actually proper. I think it's the parental or medicine branch to functional medicine, to all the other medical, new chem medicine schools, in my view, it's the longest. But also molecular medicine seems to be, is the scientists and physicians in the field, to me, are more academic and less business oriented, and therefore it seems to be lesser known than functional medicine and the others, But the more I learn about it, the more academic and the more scientific it is.
Yeah. So conventional medicine is basically toximolecular.
Yes.
It's basically using substances to basically change physiology, but by selectively poisoning cells, blocking certain functions. And I think that has its value, obviously, but in the long run, it can result in a weakening of the immune response, a weakening of the body. And it's and orthomolecular. The idea is to use doses that are needed to overcome the malfunctioning of certain organs or certain processes within the body. And so, Dr. Riordan, that was basically what. It was we started as the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning, but that was accomplished by raising the doses of the B vitamins, vitamin C, antioxidants, amino acids, whatever it is. We would use a higher dose in order to overcome the disease process. Is that a pretty good definition for?
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Basically, I learned from you, from Tom, all these vitamin C pioneers, also molecular pioneers. In summary, to me, is also molecular means, first of all, high dose, like you elegantly said. Number two, actually, also very importantly to me, is synergistic. Like vitamin C. These vitamins, nutrients we just mentioned about vitamin D as well, they work together. So we shouldn't focus on one. That's the second one. So certainly very importantly, and that also explains why also molecular has been more kind of, lesser known, more antagonized or attacked by the interest groups, is because in also molecular medicine, we are saying vitamins and nutrients are therapeutic. Mm-hmm. They are not simply supplementary.
Right.
And that's a huge difference. So there's a very big difference between also molecular and other like functional medicine or any other type of medical school.
Well, and also I like the new term integrative medicine, because there's no reason for us to be against conventional medicine. I think exactly. I tell people, if I'm in a car wreck, don't bring me to the Riordan Clinic. I want to go to where we can do acute care, and toximolecular works faster. If you're having some kind of an infection, you want the antibiotic, antibiotic. It's going to fight the infection, but with vitamin C and with other orthomolecular nutrients, you can boost the immune system. So there's no reason why they can't be used in a complementary fashion.
Yeah, absolutely right. When you have an acute heart attack or, an acute car accident or acute any, conventional Western medicine was built on acute care. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when it comes to prevention and chronic disease management, it falls short. So that's the problem. But one other thing, like you mentioned, yes, antibiotics do work. However, don't forget, actually, during the COVID, we've used high doses of, integrative, also molecular protocols. I have literally saved quite a few people from ICU.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Also, molecular medicine is as powerful and, in my view, better, more powerful than antibiotics for acute infections.
Yeah.
We have quite a few documented cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happens is doctors tend to dichotomize this thing, illness and wellness.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you
I feel
don't
that.
want illness, you want wellness, but when you're ill, you need help, you need treatment, and you can use orthomolecular when you're ill, but it's slower. It's much slower. It's like fertilizing the ground as opposed to putting some kind of an antifungal agent in to prevent fungal things. That's all good too, but ultimately wellness, I think, is the foundation. If you have good wellness, your need for illness is going to be much less.
But here, I want to mention to our audience actually one very critical message. Unfortunately, I feel we haven't been, or at least I have not been able to get across to the people, is that the beauty, I think that's a defining moment for the beauty of also molecular medicine is the non-specificity of high-dose orthomolecular therapies for acute infections. I want to highlight the non-specificity is because everybody, all my life, we've been looking for specific treatments for diseases, right? Remember, right?
Yeah.
However, think about COVID-19. We didn't know what virus it was. And by the time we agree, we need to research, we need to find out what the disease is, what the invading or agent it is, and we develop specific treatments. However, it takes time. As I repeatedly mentioned, we all have done so during the COVID. It takes time. So here we have vitamin C. I don't really care whether it's bacteria, virus, fungal. We use high-dose vitamin C along with other like vitamin D, zinc, all the other things. You know what? They are effective.
Yes.
They can minimize, they can reduce, they can even cure these invading microorganisms. So that's the beauty of non-specificity, because again, to our audience, you never know. Well, during COVID, I mentioned it. Now it's COVID-19. Next time we're COVID-25. I use that term because it will come again.
Yeah.
Monkeypox and this and that. Using the also molecular medicine, whatever it is, even if you don't know what it is, just use it. You will thank us later.
Yeah, we were really happy when Dr. Levy suggested that you come onto the board, because we're trying to maintain the Riordan Clinic as a research center, because research is what speaks to most people. I mean, you can talk to them about theoretically why high-dose vitamin C makes sense, but if they can see a study that shows that it really did improve outcomes, there was a study in the University of Iowa recently on stage 4 pancreatic cancer, where they basically did the same treatment for everyone, but on half the group, they gave them high-dose intravenous vitamin C, and that group survived twice as long or more with fewer side effects. And so that kind of science really speaks to people, and that's a good example of integrative medicine, where you're using the best of both worlds to get a better outcome for those people.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. Actually, to that, and I want to add a little bit more. In our view, both you and I, we are clinicians. Our aim is to save the patients, to heal So in my view, anything that is safe, first of all, has to be safe. How do we know? I mean, the literature studies, the medical studies. So anything that is safe and that is effective or may be effective. We don't necessarily need RCTs to prove it's effective. If it's in theory that makes sense and it's safe, patients are willing to use it, we can try. So what I call it the triple principle intervention model is that if it's something is safe and effective, maybe effective, and it's available, affordable, we can use it.
Yeah.
So that's how that's my approach to clinical medicine and to that. And amazingly, we've been able to help and improve and even reverse quite a few very difficult diseases. I'm getting so excited about orthomolecular
So
medicine.
orthomolecular medicine is really the medicine of the people, in the sense that you can go out and you can buy these supplements. And of course, there's concerns, if people are self-treating. But on the other hand, if it's done in a way that makes sense, and is used in conjunction with conventional thinking, I think it's a great way for people to empower themselves to take better care of themselves. They're using knowledge, they're using molecules that are safe and effective and relatively much less expensive than some of the new medicines that are coming out. So there's a lot of advantages along that line.
Yes, absolutely. Very importantly, people should, start taking these also medical medicine for prevention and a healthy lifestyle, including diet, exercise, and everything else. Keep healthy. Therefore, they can, they don't have to develop these diseases. By the time it's broken, it's much more difficult to fix. Prevention is always better.
So there's a trend here in the United States for more and more people to be looking at what they can do for themselves to stay healthy. Is that happening in China as well? Do you see that?
I think it's global. Yes. Definitely we see, after the COVID, we see a global shift to paying more attention to healthcare. And, I primarily travel between China and US, but I see that in Europe as well.
So what about on the other side of this coin is the fact that it seems like the world is getting more toxic. I mean, the environmental toxins, the food quality is going down. There's more toxic foods.
Yes.
We have microplastics. We have glyphosate.
Yeah.
How do you feel like how will orthomolecular medicine help us deal with that question?
That's a great question, actually. I always cite one study from, I think it was on Lancet, published in 2022 or 2023, just a few years ago, showing this is scary. I think I showed that slide last year in our cancer care reimagined. The young onset or early onset cancer, basically patients under age 50, the cancer rate over the past 30 years increased by 80%. Unbelievable. 80% globally, The death rate went up by 30%, So definitely we're dealing with more and more toxins, and the toxins are everywhere, in our water, in our food, in our clothing, in the air, everywhere, daily chemicals. So that's why we need more integrative, we really have to look at the toxins level. And, another study was also during the last 4 or 5 years showing that toxin exposure is now the number one also on global, the Lancet. I think it's global public, planetary public health or something. Anyway, it's a global study showing toxin exposure is the number one cause of all-cause mortality. I used to think, nutrition, micronutrient deficiency is number one, but it is more. Well, it makes sense because toxins, most people know about antioxidants. Well, antioxidants, they are anti, they are antioxidants. So toxins mostly are oxidants. Therefore, when you have overload of toxins and oxidants, naturally, it increases the demand of antioxidants.
Yeah.
Okay. So I discussed with Tom Levy, for a few times actually. The first study I know of using vitamin C to reverse or to improve, atherosclerosis, basically coronary artery heart disease, was in 1954 by Dr. Willis. The first we know. He used 500 milligram vitamin C 3 times a day. And we're talking about it. I don't think that can happen again anymore than it is because we have way more oxidants, and that requires a lot more antioxidants, particularly vitamin C. So to answer your question in a simplistic way is we need more antioxidants, not less, more.
So orthomolecular medicine is really the medicine of the people. I mean, because you don't need a prescription to go out and get supplements. Obviously, there are doctors that sometimes are concerned about too much supplementation, but what I found is that's only because supplements and nutrition is not taught in the medical school. I don't know about China, but when I went through medical school, we only had like 3 hours of training on nutrition. And so when doctors don't know that much about it, it seems like a foreign thing, and it seems like, gee, could this be dangerous? But the beauty of orthomolecular is that it's extremely safe overall.
Yes, absolutely, Ron. I think that's a great point we need to mention to everybody. At the overall, globally, in any country, anywhere, the much greater tendency is for the general public. We are much nutrient deficient and insufficient in these vitamins and nutrients. And it does a disservice to the public to emphasize the toxicity of vitamins and nutrients.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, with that said, we do need to mention that the certain vitamins, nutrients, when you overdo it, it can cause some issues.
Yeah,
but that's a much less issue.
Sure.
Like in Orthomolecular news service, we always mentioned about Andrew Sau in the past. We've done. I think he used to do like once a year. We have never had a case of vitamin or micronutrient, toxicity cause the deaths in our registry. That's the great part. So I want to mention, because in English, in Chinese, I see that always this difficult. I said no. Actually, we are, for anybody out there, you are much more likely to be insufficient and deficient in micronutrients than getting toxic effects from it.
Yeah. Well, Richard, I just want to thank you for joining our board. I know Dr. Riordan, when he started the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning, he saw it as a global endeavor. And I know that in my acquaintance, my being on the board and also being a doctor here, I've visited maybe 20 countries talking about orthomolecular medicine, going to conferences, presenting at conferences. And I know you too represent that global influence of orthomolecular medicine and what the Riordan Clinic stands for. So we are thrilled to have you on our board, and we're looking forward to many years of expansion of knowledge and being able to get this message out to the general public to empower them to take better care of themselves using orthomolecular medicine.
Yes. Thank you very much. Actually, yes. And the Riordan Clinic is such an prestigious institution with 50 years experiencing high-dose vitamin C research, clinical research, and education. I'm so honored to be on the board, and also I'm so honored to serve as the chief editor-in-chief of Orthomolecular Medicine. Yes, I do. I'm still based in the United States, although I found myself visiting, spending more and more time in Shanghai with my parents. They're in their 90s, Wow. And also I do find that the also molecular medicine is quite trendy now in China. More and more people are interested. And so I found myself getting busier and busier here too. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Richard, welcome aboard. And thank you so much for your service and for your experience and your enthusiasm. Nothing good happens without enthusiasm.
Thank you so much. Yes, with orthomolecular medicine, let's all hope we can live a healthier, happier, and hopefully longer life.
Amen. Very good. Thank you, Richard.
Amen. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Real Health Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all of the episodes and show notes over at realhealthpodcast.org. Also, be sure to visit riordanclinic.org, where you will find hundreds of videos and articles to help you create your own version of real health.